What would compel a woman in a faded cotton dress and worn sandals to walk uninvited into one of the most powerful boardrooms in the city? The elevator doors slide open on the 47th floor of the Sterling Financial Tower, and she steps out into a corridor of polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows. Her name is Sarah Chen, though no one here knows it yet. Her dress is simple, pale blue, the kind you might find at a discount store. Her shoes have seen better days. In her hands, she carries nothing but a single manila envelope, creased at the edges, as if it's been held too tightly for too long. The receptionist behind the sleek desk looks up, her professional smile faltering for just a fraction of a second. This woman doesn't belong here. Everything about this moment screams it. The receptionist's eyes dart to the security guard standing near the wall, a silent question passing between them. But Sarah doesn't wait for permission. She moves forward with a quiet certainty that seems to belong to someone else, someone who has every right to be here. Her footsteps are soft against the marble, barely audible, yet somehow they carry weight. The guard straightens, begins to move toward her, but she's already past the reception area, already turning down the hallway that leads to the executive wing. Behind her, the receptionist reaches for the phone, fingers trembling slightly as she dials an extension. Sarah doesn't look back. The boardroom is at the end of the corridor, behind double doors of dark mahogany. Through the narrow window panels on either side, she can see them. 17 people seated around a table that probably cost more than most people earn in a year. Men in tailored suits, women in designer blazers, every face radiating confidence, power, the absolute certainty that they control everything within these walls. At the head of the table sits Marcus Sterling himself, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, mid-sentence about quarterly projections and market expansion. His voice carries through the door, smooth and commanding. Sarah's hand reaches for the handle. For a moment, just a heartbeat, she hesitates. Her reflection stares back at her from the polished brass. A woman who looks tired, ordinary, out of place. Then something hardens in her eyes. Something that's been building for longer than anyone in that room could possibly understand. She pushes the door open. The conversation stops, as if someone has pressed pause on reality itself. 17 pairs of eyes turn toward her, expressions shifting from surprise to confusion to the beginning of indignation. Marcus Sterling's mouth closes mid-word. A woman in a red blazer halfway down the table actually gasps, a small involuntary sound. The security guard appears in the doorway behind Sarah, slightly out of breath, clearly expecting her to be escorted out immediately. But Sarah doesn't move. She stands there in the doorway, that envelope still clutched in her hands, and she looks at each of them in turn. Her gaze is steady, unhurried. When she finally speaks, her voice is quiet, but it carries in the sudden silence like a stone dropped into still water. My name is Sarah Chen. 10 years ago, I worked on the 3rd floor of this building. You probably don't remember me. Most people didn't notice me then either. Marcus Sterling leans forward slightly, his fingers steepled on the table. His voice, when it comes, is controlled but edged with steel. Miss Chen, I don't know how you got past security, but this is a private meeting. If you have business with Sterling Financial, you can make an appointment through the proper channels. Sarah doesn't flinch. If anything, a ghost of a smile touches her lips, sad and knowing. I did make an appointment, Mr. Sterling, 14 times over the past 6 months. None of them were accepted. She takes a single step into the room. The security guard moves forward, but Marcus raises one hand, stopping him. Something in Sarah's demeanor has caught his attention. Something about the way she stands there, small and ordinary and somehow immovable. 10 years ago, Sarah continues, her voice growing stronger. I was a junior analyst here. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, and I believed in what this company stood for. I believed in the mission statement you had printed on every wall back then. Do you remember it? Building tomorrow's prosperity with today's integrity. She pauses. And now there's something sharp beneath her words. Something that makes several people at the table shift uncomfortably in their chairs. A man in a grey suit near the middle of the table clears his throat. "Look, miss, we're very busy. If you have a complaint, human resources can—" "I found something," Sarah interrupts, and suddenly the envelope in her hands seems to grow heavier, more significant. In the summer of 2015, I was working late one night, reviewing loan application files for the Community Development Division. And I noticed something strange. A pattern in the approval rates for small business loans in low-income neighborhoods. At first I thought it was a mistake in the data. She looks directly at Marcus now, and her eyes are clear, unflinching. But it wasn't a mistake, was it? The temperature in the room seems to drop several degrees. Marcus Sterling's expression hasn't changed, but his knuckles have gone white where his hands rest on the table. The woman in the red blazer exchanges a quick glance with the man beside her. Sarah sees it all. She's been preparing for this moment for so long that every micro-expression, every nervous gesture registers with perfect clarity. "I brought it to my supervisor," Sarah says, "then to his supervisor. I followed every proper channel just like you would want me to. And do you know what happened?" She doesn't wait for an answer. 3 weeks later I was let go. Budget cuts, they said. Position eliminated. I was 23 years old, and I had a stain on my record that made it nearly impossible to get another job in finance. The silence now is different, heavier, loaded with something that wasn't there before. Several board members won't meet her eyes. Marcus Sterling remains motionless, watching her with the intensity of a chess player studying an opponent who just made an unexpected move. Sarah takes another step forward. "For 10 years I worked retail jobs, waitressed, did anything I could to pay my rent. For 10 years I told myself to let it go, to move on. But I couldn't. Because I kept thinking about all those families who were denied loans they qualified for, all those small businesses that never got their chance, all because of a systematic bias in your algorithm that someone programmed deliberately." Her voice cracks slightly on the last word, just for a moment, before she steadies it again. "Miss Chen," Marcus begins, his tone shifting toward something that might be conciliatory. "These are serious accusations. If you have evidence—" Sarah holds up the envelope. "I have copies of everything. The original code, the approval patterns, the emails I sent to my supervisors, documentation of similar complaints from other employees that were buried. And I have something else too." She pauses, and now a real smile crosses her face, small but genuine. "I have the name of a journalist who's very interested in this story, and a lawyer who works pro bono for whistleblowers." The board members erupt in whispers. Someone's phone buzzes insistently. The man in the grey suit starts to stand, then thinks better of it. Marcus Sterling holds up his hand again, silencing them all. When he speaks, his voice is very quiet. "What is it you want, Miss Chen?" And Sarah Chen, who walked into this room in a faded dress and worn sandals, who spent 10 years being invisible and overlooked and dismissed, looks at the most powerful man in the building and says something that no one expects. What she says next will change everything. "I want you to fix it." 4 words, simple, direct. And yet they land in the room like a thunderclap. The board members exchange bewildered glances. The woman in the red blazer actually laughs, a short, disbelieving sound that dies quickly when she realizes no one else is joining her. Marcus Sterling's eyes narrow, studying Sarah with renewed intensity, as if seeing her for the first time. "Fix it," he repeats slowly, testing the words. "Miss Chen, I think you misunderstand the situation. If what you're claiming is true, and I'm not conceding that it is, this would be a matter for legal settlement. Compensation, perhaps, but I don't want money." Sarah's voice cuts through his measured response like a blade. She takes another step forward, and now she's standing at the edge of the table, that envelope placed carefully on the polished wood surface. "I don't want a settlement that comes with a non-disclosure agreement. I don't want a check that lets you make this go away quietly. I want you to fix the system that you broke. I want you to restore every loan application that was unfairly denied. I want you to reach out to every family, every small business owner who was turned away, and I want you to give them the chance they deserved 10 years ago. The man in the gray suit leans back in his chair, arms crossed. That's absurd. Do you have any idea what you're asking? The resources, the legal implications, the right thing to do? Sarah's eyes flash. Yes, I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking you to do what you should have done a decade ago when your own employee brought this to your attention. I'm asking you to value integrity over profit margins, just like your mission statement claimed you would. Marcus Sterling is silent for a long moment. His fingers drum once against the table, a small gesture that somehow conveys volumes of calculation, consideration, and something that might be respect. And if we refuse, you go to the press with your evidence? Yes. No hesitation, no wavering. You realize that would hurt the company. Stock prices would fall. Thousands of employees who had nothing to do with this could lose their jobs. Retirement accounts would take hits. The ripple effects would be substantial. His voice is calm, almost gentle, as if he's explaining basic economics to a child. But Sarah has had 10 years to think about this. 10 years of sleepless nights weighing consequences, of questioning herself, of wondering if speaking up was worth the cost. Her answer comes without pause. I realize that the company will hurt itself if it continues to operate on a foundation of systematic injustice. I realize that those employees deserve to work for a company that actually honors its stated values. And I realize that the people who were denied those loans didn't have retirement accounts to worry about because you never gave them the chance to build their businesses in the first place. A woman near the end of the table, older than the others with grey-streaked hair and sharp features, clears her throat. She's been silent until now, watching with an expression that's difficult to read. Mr. Sterling, perhaps we should hear her out. If there's even a possibility that our lending algorithms contained biases, we have an ethical obligation to investigate. She looks at Sarah with something that might be sympathy or might be strategic calculation. Miss Chen, you said you have evidence. May we see it? Sarah's hand hovers over the envelope for just a moment. This is the point of no return. Once they see what's inside, once the proof is laid bare on this table, everything changes. The guard at the door shifts his weight. Someone's phone buzzes again, ignored. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawls below them, thousands of lives playing out in buildings and streets, unaware that in this room, something significant is unfolding. She opens the envelope. The papers inside are organized with meticulous care, tabbed and highlighted, annotated with handwritten notes in margins. She spreads them across the table, and the board members lean forward almost involuntarily. Charts showing loan approval rates broken down by neighborhood zip codes. Lines of code with certain algorithms circled in red. Printed emails with names partially redacted, but dates and subject lines clearly visible. And photographs, old ones, of herself at 23 in a Sterling Financial ID badge, smiling with the bright-eyed optimism of someone who still believed the system was fundamentally fair. Marcus picks up one of the code printouts, his eyes scanning the lines with the focus of someone who understands exactly what he's looking at. His jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. The woman in the red blazer pulls a chart toward her, and Sarah watches the color slowly drain from her face as she processes what the numbers mean. This is from our 2014 system, the gray-suited man says quietly, picking up another sheet. We upgraded in 2017. This doesn't reflect current practices, doesn't it? Sarah's voice is soft but pointed. The upgrade improved efficiency and user interface, but the core approval algorithm was ported over with only minor modifications. I checked. The bias didn't go away. It just got faster. She pulls out another document, this one more recent, with data from just 2 years ago showing similar patterns. I filed Freedom of Information requests. I talked to loan applicants who were willing to share their experiences. I spent 3 years learning to code in my spare time so I could understand exactly what your system was doing. This didn't stop. It evolved. The silence that follows is profound. Even the ambient sounds of the building seem to fade away. Through the windows a bird glides past, dark wings spread against the pale morning sky, oblivious to the weight of the moment happening behind the glass. Several board members are now reading the documents intently, passing pages between them, whispering urgently to one another. Marcus Sterling sits very still, that single code printout in his hands, staring at it as if it contains words in a language he wishes he didn't understand. The older woman with grey-streaked hair speaks again, her voice measured and thoughtful. Miss Chen, I'm Christine Alvarez. I've been on this board for 6 years, which means I wasn't here when you brought this to management's attention originally. But I need to know, and I think my colleagues need to know as well, what exactly you discovered. In plain language, for those of us who aren't programmers. Sarah takes a breath. This is the part she's rehearsed 1,000 times in her mind, standing in front of bathroom mirrors, practicing while washing dishes, refining the explanation until it was clear enough for anyone to understand. The loan approval system used machine learning to assess risk. That's standard practice. But the data it was trained on came from historical lending patterns that already contained human biases. Neighborhoods that had been historically redlined, communities where banks had been reluctant to lend for generations, those areas were flagged as higher risk, not because the actual applicants were more likely to default, but because the historical data reflected decades of discriminatory practices. The algorithm learned to perpetuate the same biases, but now it was automated, invisible, and harder to challenge. She points to one of the charts. Look at these 2 applications. Same credit scores, same business plans. I reviewed them myself. Same amount requested. The only significant difference is the zip code. One approved in 3 days. The other denied in less than 24 hours. This pattern repeated hundreds of times. Thousands, possibly. Christine Alvarez's expression has shifted into something harder, more focused. She looks at Marcus. Did you know about this? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Everyone at the table is looking at him now. Marcus Sterling, who has built an empire on the image of ethical banking, who gives speeches about corporate responsibility, who has his picture in the lobby shaking hands with community leaders, sets down the code printout with careful precision. I was made aware that an employee had raised concerns about loan approval patterns. I was told those concerns had been investigated and found to be unsubstantiated. His voice is controlled, but there's an edge to it now, a crack in the smooth facade. I was told the employee in question had been let go for performance reasons unrelated to the complaint. You were lied to, Sarah says, and there's no satisfaction in her voice, only a tired sort of truth. Or you didn't ask the right questions, or you didn't want to know the answers. The accusation should be inflammatory, should spark defensiveness or anger. Instead, Marcus looks at her with something that might be weariness or might be recognition. Perhaps all 3, he admits quietly, and the confession sends another ripple through the room. The man in the grey suit stands abruptly. Marcus, we need to consult with legal before we continue this conversation. This woman comes in here with accusations and demands, and we're just... Sit down, Gerald. Marcus's voice isn't loud, but it carries absolute authority. Gerald sits. Marcus looks back at Sarah, and in his eyes is a calculation that's different now, more complex. You said you want us to fix it. Walk me through what that would actually look like. And Sarah realizes that she has him. Not completely, not yet, but she has his attention in a way that matters. She can see him doing the math, weighing the cost of exposure against the cost of action, considering his legacy and what he wants it to mean. She pulls out another document, This one typed neatly with bullet points and implementation timelines. First, you commission an independent audit of your lending algorithms, not just current ones, but historical patterns going back 15 years. Full transparency, results made public. Second, you establish a remediation fund and task force to identify and contact every applicant who was likely denied due to algorithmic bias. You offer them the opportunity to reapply with the bias-corrected system with expedited processing and waived fees. Third, you implement ongoing monitoring with regular public reporting to ensure the bias doesn't creep back in. And fourth, she pauses, and this part is personal. This part is for that 23-year-old girl who believed in mission statements and proper channels. You establish a protected channel for employees to report ethical concerns with real protections against retaliation and mandatory board-level review. Christine Alvarez reaches for the document, reads it carefully. This is detailed, thoughtful. You've put serious work into this. She looks up at Sarah with something that might be admiration. How long have you been planning this? 10 years, Sarah says simply, give or take a few thousand hours. And in that moment, something shifts in the room's energy. These aren't just demands from an angry former employee. This is a roadmap from someone who has lived with injustice long enough to understand not just what was broken, but how to fix it. Marcus Sterling reaches for the document, and as he reads, his expression becomes increasingly thoughtful. Outside, clouds are moving in, darkening the sky, and the first drops of rain begin to streak the windows. The rain intensifies quickly, the way storms do in the city, turning from scattered drops to a steady drumming against the glass that fills the silence as Marcus reads. Sarah watches his eyes move across the page, tracking each line, each requirement, each carefully calculated cost. She can almost see the wheels turning behind his expression, the mental spreadsheets calculating not just financial impact, but reputational stakes, legal exposure, the messy human arithmetic of doing the right thing when it comes with a price tag attached. But it's Christine Alvarez who speaks first, setting the document down with deliberate care. This would cost the company somewhere between $40 and $70 million, depending on how many cases we identify. She says it matter-of-factly without judgment, simply naming the elephant that everyone at the table is thinking about. That's not counting the stock hit when news breaks, or the potential lawsuits that could follow even if we cooperate fully. Is that what we're worried about? The voice comes from a younger man near the far end of the table, someone Sarah hasn't noticed much until now. He's maybe 30, with thoughtful eyes and a loosened tie. The cost of fixing something we broke, shouldn't we be worried about the cost of not fixing it? He looks around at his colleagues, and there's something defiant in his posture, as if he's been waiting for someone to say this for a long time. I joined this company because of the mission statement Sarah quoted. I actually believed it meant something. Did any of you? Gerald, the gray-suited man, shifts uncomfortably. Jason, you're young. You don't understand the complexities of corporate governance, the fiduciary responsibilities we have to shareholders. I understand that we're talking about people's lives, Jason interrupts, his voice rising slightly. Small businesses that never opened, families that couldn't buy homes, dreams that died because an algorithm decided they weren't worth the risk based on where they lived rather than who they were. He looks at Sarah, and there's something like gratitude in his expression. I'm glad someone had the courage to come back, to not let this go. Marcus holds up a hand, forestalling Gerald's response. Jason makes a valid point, even if he's expressing it with more passion than precision. He sets the document down, leans back in his chair, and for the first time since Sarah entered the room, he looks tired. Genuinely tired, as if a weight he's been carrying without acknowledging has suddenly become visible. I built this company on the principle that finance could be a force for good, that we could be profitable and ethical simultaneously. Somewhere along the way, I stopped checking whether that was actually true. I trusted systems without verifying them. I accepted reports without questioning their conclusions. And when problems were brought to my attention, I let other people decide how seriously to take them. The admission hangs in the air like the rain hangs outside, persistent and unavoidable. Several board members looked genuinely shocked. Marcus Sterling doesn't do vulnerability. Marcus Sterling doesn't admit mistakes. But here he is in front of his entire board, and a woman in a faded dress who walked in uninvited, acknowledging failure. Sarah feels something unexpected then. Not triumph exactly, though she'd imagined this moment as a kind of victory. Something more complicated. Because looking at Marcus now, she sees not the faceless corporation she's been fighting in her mind for 10 years, but a man who built something with good intentions and watched it drift from those moorings without quite noticing when or how. It doesn't excuse what happened, but it complicates the story she's been telling herself, the simple narrative of villains and victims that made the anger easier to carry. "Mr. Sterling," she says quietly, and something in her tone makes everyone at the table turn toward her again. "I need you to understand something. This isn't about punishing you or the company. If it were, I would have gone straight to the press. I would have filed lawsuits. I would have done everything possible to tear down what you built." She pauses, choosing her words with care. "But I remember working here. I remember believing this place could be different. And I've spent 10 years watching other companies, other industries, make the same mistakes with algorithms and automated systems. Bias built into code that nobody questions because it looks objective. I don't just want to expose one company's failing. I want to create a model for how to fix it, how to make it right." Christine Alvarez is nodding slowly, understanding dawning in her expression. "You want us to be the first, to show other companies how it's done. I want you to be what you claim to be," Sarah corrects gently. "Building tomorrow's prosperity with today's integrity. Actually doing it this time." The woman in the red blazer, who has been silent for a while now, speaks up. Her voice is shaky, uncertain in a way that suggests this conversation has shaken something loose in her worldview. "I oversee the Community Development Division now. I have for 3 years. If what you're saying is true, then I've been perpetuating this without knowing it." She looks down at her hands, expensive rings catching the grey light from the windows. "How many people did I turn away? How many dreams did I kill by just following the system?" Sarah recognizes the look on her face. It's the same look she saw in her own mirror for months after she was fired. The sick realization that you've been part of something wrong, even if unknowingly. "You didn't design the system," Sarah says, and there's unexpected compassion in her voice. "But now you know. Now you can help fix it." Marcus is watching this exchange with keen attention, and when he speaks again, there's a decisiveness in his tone that wasn't there before. "All right, let's say we do this. Full audit, remediation fund, algorithm reform, the protected reporting channel. Let's say we commit to every item on your list." He leans forward, elbows on the table, fixing Sarah with an intense stare. "What do you want in return? And please don't tell me nothing. Nobody carries something like this for 10 years without wanting something personal out of it." The question catches Sarah off guard, even though she should have anticipated it. She's thought about justice, about accountability, about systemic change. But what does she want for herself? The answer, when it comes, surprises her as much as it probably surprises them. "I want to help make it happen. I want to be part of the task force that implements these changes. Not as some outside consultant you can ignore when it gets inconvenient, but as someone with real authority to see this through." She can hear the tremor in her own voice, the vulnerability of asking for something after spending so long just demanding. I spent 10 years being dismissed, being invisible, being told I didn't matter. I want to matter. I want my work to matter, and I want to look at every person we help, every business we give a second chance, and know that speaking up wasn't for nothing. Gerald starts to object. Something about liability and conflict of interest, but Marcus silences him with a look. You'd be working with the very people who let you go, who dismissed your concerns, who damaged your career. You understand that won't be easy? Nothing about the last 10 years has been easy, Sarah replies. I think I can handle difficult. A small smile crosses Marcus's face, brief but genuine. I think you can too. He looks around the table, meeting each board member's eyes in turn. We need a vote. Full implementation of Miss Chen's proposal, including her involvement in the remediation process. This will be expensive. It will be complicated. It will probably get worse before it gets better. But I think it's necessary. I think it's right. And I think we have an opportunity to lead instead of just react. He pauses, letting the weight of the moment settle. All in favor. The seconds that follow feel elastic, stretched out like taffy. Sarah holds her breath without meaning to. Christine Alvarez's hand goes up first, firm and decisive. Then Jason's, almost before Christine's is fully raised. The woman in the red blazer hesitates, her hand trembling slightly. But then she raises it too, and Sarah sees tears in her eyes. One by one, hands rise around the table. Not all of them. Gerald keeps his arms crossed, his expression thunderous. Two others near him remain still, whether in solidarity or genuine opposition, Sarah can't tell. But the majority is clear. The vote carries. Marcus nods once, satisfied. Motion passes. Gerald, I'll need you to start working with legal on the framework despite your objections. Christine, you'll chair the task force. Miss Chen, we'll need to work out terms of employment, background checks, all the usual formalities, but consider yourself hired as of today, pending that paperwork. He stands, and the rest of the board follows his lead, the meeting clearly transitioning to its next phase. I want preliminary audit proposals on my desk by Friday. I want a press strategy that's honest but strategic. And I want everyone in this room to understand that we're about to put this company under a microscope. Things will get uncomfortable, but we do this right, or we don't do it at all. People begin gathering papers, pulling out phones, the energy in the room shifting from confrontation to coordination. Sarah stands there amid the sudden bustle, feeling oddly disconnected, as if she's watching the scene from outside herself. 10 years of preparation, of carrying this weight, of imagining this confrontation, and it's over in less than an hour. Not over, she corrects herself, just beginning, really. But the impossible part, the part where she had to walk into this room and demand to be heard, that's done. Christine Alvarez approaches her, extending a hand. Welcome aboard, Sarah. I have a feeling you're going to keep us honest. Her grip is firm, professional, but there's warmth in her eyes. We should meet tomorrow to start planning implementation. Are you free at 9? Sarah almost laughs at the question. Free? She's been free for 10 years, working jobs with flexible schedules and no real future. Yes, she manages. 9 works. As the board members begin filing out, discussing next steps and assigning responsibilities, Sarah finds herself alone with Marcus for a moment. He's gathering his papers slowly, deliberately, and she senses he's been waiting for this opportunity. When he speaks, his voice is low, meant only for her. You could have destroyed us, you know. With what you have in that envelope, you could have gone to regulators, to the press, made this a scandal that would have buried the company. But you didn't. Why? Sarah considers the question, really considers it. Outside, the rain is beginning to ease, clouds breaking apart to reveal patches of pale sky. Because I didn't want revenge. I wanted repair, and you can't repair something by destroying it. She meets his eyes, and there's understanding passing between them, a recognition that this story is more complicated than simple justice. Besides, maybe I still believed somewhere deep down that the mission statement could be true, that you could be the kind of company you claim to be. Maybe I wanted to believe that more than I wanted to be right about you being corrupt. Marcus absorbs this, nodding slowly. That's either very wise or very naive. I'm not sure which. Maybe both, Sarah allows. I guess we'll find out. He extends his hand, and after a moment she takes it. His grip is firm, the handshake of someone sealing a real agreement, not just performing a social nicety. When he releases her hand, he looks at her with something that might be respect, or might be caution, or might be both. Don't let us off easy, he says. Don't let me off easy. That's what I need from you in this process. Someone who won't be satisfied with half measures or PR solutions. Someone who will hold us to the standard we should have been holding ourselves to all along. Can you do that? Yes, Sarah says without hesitation. That's exactly what I can do. As Marcus leaves the boardroom, Sarah is left alone with the scattered papers on the table, the evidence of a decade's patient work. The proof that speaking up still matters even when it seems futile. She walks to the window, looking out at the city below, at the neighborhoods represented in those zip codes, at the lives that might now have different endings than they would have had if she'd stayed silent. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. She almost ignores it, but something makes her check. The message is simple. Saw you go into Sterling Tower. Are they actually listening? The journalist you mentioned before. I'm ready to publish if they don't. Sarah stares at the message for a long moment, then types her reply. They're listening. But keep your story ready. We're going to need someone watching to make sure they follow through. Because this is the thing she's learned in 10 years of waiting, planning, surviving. Trust is rebuilt through action, not promises. And the real work, the hard work of actually fixing what's broken, is only just beginning. She turns away from the window and begins carefully gathering her papers, organizing them back into the manila envelope. But she leaves one document on the table, deliberately. The original code printout that Marcus was reading. A reminder, a challenge, a promise that this moment mattered, but that what comes next will matter more. The walk to the elevator feels longer than it should. Sarah's legs are unsteady beneath her, adrenaline finally giving way to the sheer exhaustion of holding herself together for so long. The security guard who tried to stop her earlier is nowhere to be seen. The receptionist watches her pass with wide eyes, no longer seeing someone who doesn't belong, but someone who just changed the trajectory of an entire corporation. Sarah doesn't acknowledge the stare. She keeps moving forward, one foot in front of the other, until the elevator doors close and she's alone in the descending box of brushed steel and soft lighting. It's only then, in that private moment of descent, that her hands begin to shake. Really shake. Not the slight tremor she kept hidden in the boardroom, but a full-body release of tension that makes her grip the handrail for support. She did it. She actually did it. For 10 years she imagined this moment, rehearsed it, dreamed it, doubted it, and now it's real. The envelope in her other hand suddenly feels lighter, as if the weight it carried has been transferred somewhere else, distributed across the shoulders of people who can actually do something about it. The elevator reaches the ground floor, and the doors open onto the massive lobby with its polished floors and the giant mission statement etched into the marble wall. Building tomorrow's prosperity with today's integrity. She stops, staring at those words, and feels something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking, opening. Like a fist that's been clenched too long, finally remembering how to relax. Miss? A voice breaks through her reverie. A young woman in a security uniform, different from the guard upstairs, is approaching with concern evident on her face. Are you all right? Do you need to sit down? Sarah realizes she must look strange, standing frozen in the middle of the lobby, staring at a wall, her hands still trembling. "I'm fine," she says, but her voice comes out hoarse. I need a minute." The security guard guides her gently to a bench near the windows. Outside, the rain has stopped completely now, and watery sunlight is breaking through the clouds, casting strange patterns of light and shadow across the street. People hurry past with their lives and their purposes, unaware that something shifted in the building behind them, that a small crack has appeared in the way things have always been done. Sarah sits, and the guard brings her water in a small paper cup from a nearby cooler. The kindness of the gesture, simple and unbidden, nearly undoes her. She drinks, the cool water grounding her back in her body, in this moment, in the reality that she hasn't just been dreaming for the past hour. Her phone buzzes again, multiple messages now coming in rapid succession. The journalist: "Need confirmation. Is this really happening?" Someone else, a name she doesn't recognize. "Heard through the grapevine something big went down at Sterling. You okay?" And then, surprisingly, a number she does know. Her old supervisor from 10 years ago, the one who told her the position was being eliminated. The message is short. "I heard you were here. I'm sorry. I should have fought harder for you." She stares at that last message for a long time. Part of her wants to feel vindicated, to savor the apology she never thought would come. But mostly she just feels tired. Tired and something else. Scared, maybe. Because now comes the harder part. Now comes the actual work of making good on everything she demanded up in that boardroom. Now comes the daily reality of walking back into a building that once rejected her, of working alongside people who might resent her presence, of proving that she belongs in spaces that once told her she didn't. Her phone rings, startling her. Christine Alvarez's name appears on the screen. Sarah hesitates only a moment before answering. "Sarah, I hope I'm not calling too soon." Christine's voice is brisk, but not unkind. "I wanted to catch you before you left the building. Can you come back up? There's someone who wants to meet you." Every instinct tells Sarah to say no, to go home, to process everything that just happened before diving into whatever comes next. But she hears herself saying yes, agreeing to return to the 47th floor, to step back into the space she just escaped. Because this is what she asked for, isn't it? To be part of the solution, not just the person who pointed out the problem. The elevator ride back up feels different. Longer, heavier. Sarah watches the numbers climb and tries to steady her breathing. By the time she reaches the executive floor again, she's managed to stop her hands from shaking, at least visibly. Christine is waiting by the reception desk, and beside her stands a woman Sarah has never seen before. Late 50s maybe, with dark skin and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. She's wearing a navy suit that speaks of quiet authority, and her eyes assess Sarah with the sharp attention of someone who misses very little. "Sarah Chen, this is Dr. Amara Okafor. She's a forensic data analyst and algorithm auditor, one of the best in the country." Christine makes the introduction with obvious respect. Marcus has already reached out to her about conducting the independent audit. She wanted to meet you before agreeing to take the job. Dr. Okafor extends her hand, and her grip is surprisingly strong. "Miss Chen, I've heard quite a bit about you in the last 30 minutes. I understand you single-handedly brought a major financial institution to its knees with nothing but a manila envelope and stubborn determination." There's something in her tone that Sarah can't quite read. Not mockery, but not pure admiration either. Something testing. "I didn't bring them to their knees," Sarah says carefully. "I asked them to stand up." A smile flickers across Dr. Okafor's face, brief but genuine. "Interesting distinction. Walk with me." It's not a question. She starts down the hallway without waiting for confirmation, and Sarah and Christine follow. They pass empty conference rooms and offices where people are bent over computers, unaware that the world is about to shift beneath them. Dr. Okafor leads them to a smaller conference room, waves them inside, and closes the door. When she turns to face Sarah, her expression has shifted into something more serious. I've been doing this work for 15 years, examining algorithms for bias, helping companies clean up their systems, testifying in court cases. And I've learned that there are two types of whistleblowers. There are the ones who want to burn everything down, who are motivated by anger and revenge, and frankly, I don't blame them. And then there are the ones who still believe the system can work if only someone forces it to work correctly. You strike me as the second type. Sarah nods slowly, unsure where this is going. That makes you either an idealist or a fool, and I haven't decided which yet. Dr. Okafor pulls out a chair and sits, gesturing for Sarah and Christine to do the same. Here's what you need to understand. If I take this job and conduct a real audit, not a whitewash but an actual forensic examination of Sterling's lending algorithms, I'm going to find things. Lots of things. Some of them will be worse than what you've already discovered. Some of them will implicate people you might like, people who thought they were doing good work. This will get ugly before it gets better. I know, Sarah says quietly. Do you? Dr. Okafor leans forward, her gaze intense. Because here's what happens next. When the audit results go public, there will be lawsuits, lots of them. There will be regulatory investigations. There will be media attention, protesters outside this building, angry shareholders, employees worried about their jobs. You'll become a public figure whether you want to or not. Your face will be on the news. People will dig into your background, your life, everything you've ever done, and half the country will call you a hero while the other half calls you a traitor who destroyed a good company. Your life as you know it is over. Are you prepared for that? The silence that follows feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. Sarah thinks about her small apartment, her quiet life, the anonymity she's lived in for 10 years. She thinks about what it would mean to give all that up, to become a symbol instead of a person, to have her story told and retold until it no longer quite belongs to her. No, she says finally, honestly. I'm not prepared for that. I don't think anyone could be. But I'm willing to face it anyway. Dr. Okafor studies her for another long moment, then nods. Good. The ones who think they're prepared are usually lying to themselves. She looks at Christine. I'll take the job, but I want full access, no restrictions, and the results go public regardless of what they show. Non-negotiable. Agreed, Christine says without hesitation. When can you start? I already have. Dr. Okafor pulls out a tablet from her bag and swipes through several screens. I had my team pull Sterling's publicly available data this morning after Marcus called. Preliminary analysis suggests Miss Chen's findings are just the tip of a very large iceberg. She turns the tablet so Sarah can see. Graphs and charts fill the screen, dense with information. Your geographic bias pattern, it's there, exactly as you documented. But there are also approval rate disparities based on applicant names that suggest possible ethnic discrimination, timing patterns that indicate some neighborhoods were being systematically deprioritized in processing queues, and what appears to be a feedback loop where denied applications made future approvals from the same area even less likely. Sarah feels something cold settle in her stomach. She knew it was bad. She documented that it was bad. But seeing it laid out like this, quantified and graphed and undeniable, makes it real in a new way. How many people? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. How many people were affected? Dr. Okafor meets her eyes. Thousands, possibly tens of thousands over the 15-year period we're examining. And that's just loan denials. That doesn't count the businesses that never started, the jobs that were never created, the generational wealth that was never built because someone's zip code flagged an algorithm. Christine has gone pale. This is going to be worse than we thought. It always is, Dr. Okafor says matter-of-factly. The question is whether you have the courage to see it through, to not just acknowledge the problem, but actually fix it, even when the costs become clear. even when people you care about are implicated, even when it would be easier to settle quietly and move on. She looks between Christine and Sarah. So I need to know right now, before we go any further. Are you both committed to this? Really committed? Because once we start, there's no halfway. It's all in or nothing. Sarah thinks about the 23-year-old version of herself, walking into work every day believing she could make a difference. She thinks about the years of silence, of doubt, of wondering if speaking up mattered at all. She thinks about all the people in those statistics Dr. Okafor just showed her, all the dreams deferred or denied, all the possibilities that never got their chance. I'm in, she says, all the way. Christine takes a deep breath, and Sarah can see the calculation happening behind her eyes, the weighing of professional risk against moral responsibility. I'm in too, she says finally. God help me, I'm in. Dr. Okafor nods, satisfied. Then we start tomorrow. Sarah, I'll need you to walk me through everything you found, every piece of evidence, every source. We're going to verify it all independently, and then we're going to dig deeper. This will consume your life for the next several months. You ready for that? Yes. And saying it, Sarah realizes she's been ready for 10 years. Everything has been leading to this moment, to this decision, to finally having the chance to turn evidence into action. They spend the next hour going over logistics, timelines, preliminary findings. Dr. Okafor works with the focused intensity of someone who has done this dance before, who knows exactly what questions to ask and what details matter. By the time they finish, the sun has moved across the sky, painting the conference room in amber light that makes everything feel suspended, caught between what was and what's coming. Sarah finally leaves the building near dusk, stepping out into air that smells rain-washed and clean. The city is coming alive with evening energy, lights beginning to glow in windows, people heading home or out for dinner or to whatever lives they've built. She stands on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing, just being present in her body in this specific moment. Her phone rings. The journalist? She almost doesn't answer, but then does. It's happening, she says before he can ask. Full audit, independent investigator, public results. It's really happening. When do you go public? His voice is eager, ready. Soon. A few weeks maybe after the preliminary audit confirms what we already know. Sarah pauses, watching a couple walk past hand in hand, laughing about something. Can you hold the story until then? I need time to make sure this is done right. I can hold it, but Sarah... His voice drops, becomes serious. This is going to get big, really big. You need to be ready. Everyone keeps telling me that, she says, and despite everything, she almost laughs. I'm starting to believe it. When she hangs up, she realizes someone is standing a few feet away, watching her. A man in a rumpled coat, late 40s maybe, with the worn look of someone who's been waiting a long time. He approaches slowly, cautiously, as if afraid she might run. Ms. Chen? I'm David Torres. I owned a small printing business in the Bronx. Or I would have if Sterling Financial had approved my loan application. That was 8 years ago. He stops a respectful distance away, his hands shoved in his pockets. I heard you were here today. I heard what you did. I wanted to say thank you for not forgetting, for not giving up. Sarah feels her throat tighten. This is real. Not abstract statistics or algorithm codes, but this man standing in front of her with gratitude in his eyes for something she hasn't even accomplished yet. I'm going to try to make it right, she tells him. I can't promise it'll work, but I'm going to try. That's more than anyone else has done, David says simply. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a business card, pressed and faded. When you need stories, when you need proof that this mattered, call me. I kept everything, every email, every denial letter, every piece of evidence that I was qualified. I kept it all, just in case someone someday cared enough to ask. She takes the card, and the weight of it in her palm feels enormous, like holding someone's hope made tangible. "I'll call," she promises. As he walks away, Sarah looks up at the sterling financial tower rising above her, glass and steel catching the dying light, and she understands with sudden clarity that this building contains both the problem and the solution, the harm and the potential healing. And she's about to tear it all open, expose every flaw, every failure, every buried truth. The question that lodges in her chest as she turns toward home isn't whether she can do this. It's whether she can handle what comes after, when all those truths are finally laid bare and there's nowhere left to hide. 3 months pass like a storm moving through, fast in some moments, unbearably slow in others. Sarah moves through them in a kind of controlled chaos. Her small apartment transformed into a war room of documents and laptops and coffee cups that multiply faster than she can wash them. Dr. Okafor's team works with surgical precision, peeling back layers of code and data like archaeologists excavating a buried city. And what they find, piece by piece, day by day, is worse than anyone imagined. The algorithm didn't just contain bias. It learned bias. It amplified bias. It created new patterns of discrimination that no human programmer explicitly intended, but that emerged anyway, like toxic flowers growing in contaminated soil. Every week brings new discoveries. Every meeting reveals another layer of damage. Sarah sits in conference rooms that smell of expensive coffee and watches grown professionals put their heads in their hands as they realize the scope of what happened under their watch. But it's the stories that break her. The individual human stories that arrive in waves once word begins to leak out that Sterling is conducting an internal investigation. They come through lawyers, through advocacy groups, through people who somehow find her email address and send messages that begin with, "I don't know if you remember," or "I don't know if this matters," or simply, "Please help." Each one is a life deflected from its intended trajectory. A restaurant that never opened, a community center that stayed a dream. A mother who couldn't refinance to afford her daughter's medical treatment. A young man whose tech startup died before it could breathe. Sarah reads every single one. She makes herself read them, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts, because these aren't statistics anymore. They're people. They have names and faces and stories, and they trusted a system that failed them in ways they couldn't even see, couldn't even fight, because how do you fight an algorithm that never has to explain itself? It's a Tuesday morning, grey and cold, when Dr. Okafor calls an emergency meeting. Her voice on the phone is tight, controlled, but Sarah can hear something underneath it. Anger, maybe, or shock, or both. "You need to see this," is all she says. Now. Sarah arrives at Sterling Tower to find the small conference room packed with people she's come to know over these months. Christine Alvarez looking exhausted, shadows under her eyes that suggest too many sleepless nights. Jason, the young board member who spoke up for her that first day, now heading the remediation task force with an intensity that borders on obsessive. Marcus Sterling himself, somehow looking older than he did 3 months ago, as if the weight of what they've uncovered has physically aged him. And Dr. Okafor, standing at the head of the table with her tablet in hand and an expression that makes Sarah's stomach drop. "We found something," Dr. Okafor says without preamble. No pleasantries, no warm-up. She swipes her tablet and the screen behind her comes to life with code and data flows. The bias in the lending algorithm wasn't accidental, it wasn't emergent, it was intentional. The room goes completely silent. Sarah can hear the heating system clicking on, the muffled sounds of the city far below, her own heartbeat suddenly loud in her ears. Marcus stands slowly. "Explain." Dr. Okafor pulls up a section of code, highlighted in red. This is from the 2014 version of the algorithm, the one Sarah originally flagged. See this weighting factor here? It's applying what's called a risk adjustment, based on applicant location. But look at how it's structured. She zooms in, highlighting specific lines. This isn't machine learning gone wrong. This is hand-coded logic. Someone wrote this deliberately. Someone created a function that specifically increased risk scores for certain zip codes. And they did it in a way that was buried deep enough that routine audits wouldn't catch it. Christine's voice is barely a whisper. Who? That's what took us 3 weeks to trace. Dr. Okafor pulls up another screen, this one showing personnel records, access logs, code commits. The original implementation was done by a senior developer named Robert Chen. No relation to Sarah, she adds, glancing at her. He worked here from 2012 to 2016. But here's where it gets interesting. The change was approved and pushed to production by someone in upper management. Someone who had to sign off on major algorithm modifications. She pulls up an email chain. Sarah squints at the screen, reading the names, the dates, the casual tone of people discussing what they must have known was wrong but treating it like just another business decision. And then she sees it. The final approval signature. The name that makes everything suddenly, horribly clear. Gerald Thompson. The grey-suited board member who opposed her from the beginning. Who voted against the remediation plan. Who has been fighting every reform effort with increasing desperation these past 3 months. No. Marcus's voice is hollow. Gerald has been with this company for 25 years. He helped me build this. He wouldn't... There's more. Dr. Okafor's tone is gentle now, almost apologetic. She pulls up financial records, transaction histories. After the biased algorithm was implemented, there was a measurable shift in loan approvals toward wealthier neighborhoods, and corresponding increases in investment partnerships between Sterling financial and development firms in those same areas. Development firms that Gerald Thompson had personal financial stakes in. The algorithm wasn't just discriminatory, it was steering capital toward investments that personally benefited someone inside the company. The word hangs in the air, unspoken but understood by everyone in the room. Fraud. Not just bias, not just negligence, deliberate, calculated fraud that used discrimination as a profit mechanism. Sarah feels something cold and sharp settle behind her ribs. She thought she understood what she was fighting. She thought she'd uncovered the worst of it. But this is different. This is someone looking at vulnerable communities and seeing not people, but obstacles to profit. And then systematically coding that cruelty into a system that would run automatically, invisibly, for years. Where is he? Marcus's voice has changed, gone hard and flat in a way Sarah hasn't heard before. Where is Gerald right now? His office, last I checked. Jason pulls out his phone, starts typing rapidly. I'll get security to make sure he doesn't leave. No. Marcus holds up a hand. No security. Not yet. I need to hear this from him directly. I need to understand how this happened. He looks at Dr. Okafor. Can you prove all of this? Beyond any doubt? I can prove the code was intentional. I can prove it was implemented with his approval. I can prove the financial connections. Whether a prosecutor can prove criminal intent beyond reasonable doubt, that's for lawyers and courts to decide. But as an expert witness, yes. This evidence is solid. Marcus nods once, then turns and walks out of the conference room. After a moment's hesitation, Christine follows. Then Jason. Sarah looks at Dr. Okafor, who gestures toward the door. You should be there, she says quietly. You started this. You should see it through. They walk down the corridor in a silent procession. Other employees sense something is happening, stepping out of offices, watching with curious and concerned faces as this strange parade makes its way to the executive wing. Gerald's office door is closed. Marcus doesn't knock. He opens it and walks in, and the rest of them follow. Gerald is at his desk, reading something on his computer screen. He looks up, annoyed at the interruption, and his expression shifts as he sees the group entering his office. Sarah watches emotions flicker across his face in rapid succession. Confusion, irritation, understanding, and then, settling in like a mask, defensive anger. Marcus, I'm in the middle of something. Whatever this is about, it can wait. No, Gerald, it really can't. Marcus's voice is eerily calm. He moves to stand directly in front of the desk, hands in his pockets, the posture of a man trying very hard to maintain control. Dr. Okafor has found something interesting in the algorithm audit, something I need you to explain to me. Sarah sees it then, the moment Gerald understands. His jaw tightens, his hands resting on the desk curl into fists, but his voice when he speaks is smooth, practiced. I'm sure whatever Dr. Okafor thinks she found can be explained. These systems are complex. Bugs happen. Emergent behaviors. It wasn't a bug. Dr. Okafor steps forward, tablet in hand. It was intentionally coded, and you approved it. Your digital signature is all over the implementation records, so either you're going to explain why you did it, or you're going to sit there and insult everyone's intelligence by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. The silence that follows is excruciating. Sarah can see Gerald calculating, weighing his options, deciding how much to admit or deny. His eyes dart around the room, landing on each person in turn, and when they reach Sarah, something ugly crosses his face. This is because of her, isn't it? He points at Sarah, his voice rising. You bring in some disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind, turn the entire company upside down, and now you're looking for scapegoats to justify the chaos. Answer the question, Gerald. Marcus's calm is cracking now, anger bleeding through. Did you approve an algorithm modification that deliberately discriminated against certain neighborhoods? I approved an algorithm that optimized our risk-return profile. That's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. Maximize shareholder value. Gerald stands now, his own anger fully ignited. You want to talk about discrimination? Let's talk about how those neighborhoods had higher default rates historically, how lending there was genuinely riskier. The algorithm reflected economic reality. If you don't like the reality, blame society, not me. The default rates were higher because of decades of discriminatory lending practices, Christine says, her voice shaking with suppressed fury. You weren't reflecting reality. You were perpetuating injustice and calling it risk management, and profiting from it. Jason holds up his phone, showing financial records. Your investments in development firms that benefited from steering capital away from those neighborhoods. Want to explain that? Gerald goes very still. For a long moment, no one speaks. Outside the window, a plane moves across the sky, tiny and silent. Sarah finds herself thinking about all those stories, all those lives, all those dreams, and the man standing in front of her who looked at them like line items in a spreadsheet, who saw human beings and calculated how much he could gain from their exclusion. When Gerald finally speaks, his voice is different, quieter, bitter. You think you're so righteous, all of you, standing here judging me. But this is how the world works. Capital flows where it can grow most efficiently. Resources get allocated based on risk. That's economics. That's reality. I just made sure Sterling was positioned to benefit from it. He looks directly at Marcus. And for 20 years, you benefited too. Those profits that let you build this empire, that let you play philanthropist and give speeches about corporate responsibility. Where do you think they came from? You think your hands are clean? You just didn't ask questions when the numbers looked good. The accusation lands like a physical blow. Sarah watches Marcus absorb it, watches him struggle with the truth in it, however partial. Because Gerald is right about one thing. The system ran for years, generated returns, and most people were content not to look too closely at how. But it's Marcus who speaks next, and his voice is steady now, resolved. You're right. I didn't ask enough questions. I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted. I let my desire to believe we were doing good blind me to evidence that we weren't. That's on me. That's my failure as a leader. He pauses, meeting Gerald's eyes. But I'm asking questions now. And I'm not going to stop asking them. You're done here, Gerald. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. And we're turning over everything we found to the appropriate authorities. If they want to prosecute, we won't stand in their way. Gerald laughs, harsh and disbelieving. You're going to destroy your own company. You realize that? The lawsuits alone will bankrupt you. And for what? To make yourself feel better? To pretend you're some kind of hero? He looks at Sarah with open contempt. And you? You think you won something here? You just ended your career before it even restarted. No one else will hire you after this. You'll be toxic, a liability. You'll spend the rest of your life being the woman who brought down Sterling Financial. Sarah meets his gaze and doesn't flinch. If that's the cost of doing the right thing, I'll pay it. Every day for the rest of my life, I'll pay it gladly. Something in her certainty seems to deflate Gerald's anger. He sinks back into his chair, suddenly looking older, diminished. Marcus makes a call. Security arrives. Gerald is walked out of his own office, past colleagues who stare in confusion and shock, past the mission statement etched in marble in the lobby, out into the cold afternoon where his 25 years mean nothing anymore. Sarah stands at Gerald's office window and watches him cross the plaza below, alone, his silhouette small against the vast grey sky. She doesn't feel triumph. She doesn't feel vindication. She feels tired and sad, and acutely aware that this moment, this confrontation she didn't even know she was building toward, isn't the end of anything. It's just the beginning of the next chapter, the one where all of this becomes public, where the real reckoning begins. Behind her, she hears Marcus speaking quietly to Christine and Dr. Okafor about lawyers and press statements and damage control. She hears Jason asking what happens next, his voice young and uncertain. She hears all of it, but distantly, as if she's listening from underwater. Her phone vibrates, a text from David Torres, the man who would have owned a printing business. Just 2 words, "Thank you." And then another message, and another. Somehow word has spread. Somehow people know. Her phone begins to fill with messages from numbers she doesn't recognize, from people whose loan applications were denied years ago, from communities that were systematically excluded. They don't know all the details yet, but they know something changed today. They know someone fought for them. Sarah closes her eyes and lets herself feel the weight of it all, the fear, the responsibility, the impossible burden of all those hopes now resting on whether she and this imperfect company can actually deliver on the promise of repair. And underneath it all, something else. Something that feels almost like peace. Because for the first time in 10 years, the truth is finally, completely, undeniably out in the light. 6 months later, Sarah stands in a community center in the South Bronx, watching people file through the doors with folders and hope written across their faces. The center smells of fresh paint and possibility. It's a Saturday morning, and outside, spring is tentatively arriving. Trees budding with green promises along streets that have seen too many broken ones. But today feels different. Today feels like something might actually be changing. The remediation program officially launched 3 weeks ago. After months of legal negotiations, system overhauls, and endless meetings that blurred together into a symphony of bureaucracy and determination. Sterling Financial set up centers like this one in 12 cities, staffed with loan officers trained specifically to review cases that were denied by the biased algorithm. No fees. No barriers, just a genuine second chance for people who were told no when they should have heard yes. Sarah watches a woman in her 60s approach the desk, clutching papers that look like they've been carried for years. She watches a young couple, nervous and holding hands, speak with a loan officer about the bakery they've been dreaming of opening. She watches a man who reminds her of David Torres hand over a business plan that's clearly been refined and revised dozens of times, each revision representing another year of waiting, of not giving up even when the world seemed designed to make him do exactly that. Dr. Okafor stands beside her, observing with the same analytical intensity she brings to everything. "First day numbers are good," she says quietly. "Better than projected. Word is spreading fast." "It's not enough though, is it?" Sarah's voice is soft. "Even if we help every single person who applies now, we can't give back the years they lost. The businesses that would have employed people, the wealth that would have been built and passed down. We're repairing, but we're not restoring." "Not really." "No," Dr. Okafor agrees. "You can't undo time, you can't unbake a cake, but you can acknowledge the harm and you can commit to doing better going forward. That matters more than people realize, not just the material remediation, but the acknowledgement, the willingness to say we were wrong and we're going to try to make it right. In my experience, that's rarer than you'd think." Marcus Sterling enters the center then, unannounced and without the usual entourage. He's wearing jeans and a simple sweater, looking more human than Sarah has ever seen him in the months they've worked together. He moves through the space with visible discomfort, not because he doesn't want to be here, but because he's acutely aware that his presence might be more about his own need for absolution than actually helping anyone. Sarah recognizes the feeling. She's been grappling with it herself, wondering where the line is between genuine repair and performative redemption. He stops beside them, watching a loan officer shake hands with an applicant whose loan has just been approved. The joy on the man's face is unguarded, pure. Marcus watches it like someone witnessing something sacred. "There have been 53 approvals today," he says quietly. "Christine just texted me the numbers. 53 people who will get to try, who will get their chance." "And how many denials?" Sarah asks, because she needs to know, needs to face even the difficult parts. 17. Legitimate credit issues or business plans that genuinely don't meet lending standards, even with the corrected system. We're not approving everyone. That would be its own kind of wrong. But we're making sure the decisions are based on actual qualifications, not zip codes or algorithm prejudices. He turns to look at her directly. "The board voted yesterday to make the algorithmic auditing and bias testing a permanent part of our operations. Annual public reports, independent oversight. Everything you asked for is being institutionalized." Sarah nods, absorbing this. It's victory, she supposes. But it doesn't feel the way she imagined victory would feel all those years she spent preparing for that walk into the boardroom. It feels complicated, bittersweet, real in a way that fantasies of justice never are. The news broke 2 months ago in a coordinated release between Sterling Financial and the journalist who had been waiting to publish. The headlines were brutal. The stock price tanked, and for 3 weeks, Sarah couldn't check her phone without seeing her name and face attached to think pieces and hot takes and analysis that rarely captured the full complexity of what actually happened. She was called a hero by some, a traitor by others, an idealist, a destroyer, a symbol, a cautionary tale. She was everything except just herself. But then something unexpected happened. Other companies started conducting their own algorithm audits. Not because they wanted to, but because their employees started asking questions. Their customers started demanding transparency. Their board started realizing that what happened to Sterling could happen to them. The ripple effect Sarah hoped for began to manifest, slowly and imperfectly, but undeniably. She testified before Congress 3 times. She appeared on news programs where hosts asked her questions that were designed more for sound bites than understanding. She received death threats and marriage proposals and letters from students writing papers about corporate ethics. Through it all, she kept coming back to moments like this, standing in community centers and watching real people engage with the second chances that shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. Christine Alvarez approaches them, tablet in hand but a smile on her face. She's been transformed by these months, shedding the polished corporate exterior to reveal someone who genuinely cares about the work in a way that goes beyond career advancement. "There's someone here who's asking for you specifically, Sarah. Says you gave him a business card to call when he was ready." Sarah's heart jumps. She follows Christine to a small consultation room where David Torres sits. That same worn coat he was wearing 6 months ago, but his posture is different now. More upright, more hopeful. He stands when she enters, extending his hand. "Miss Chen, I came to reapply for the printing business. I know it's been 8 years. I know I'm older now, the market has changed. But I kept learning, kept updating my business plan, kept believing that maybe, someday..." He trails off, emotion making his voice rough. "Maybe someday someone would care enough to give me a real shot." "You kept everything?" Sarah asks, though she already knows the answer. "Everything. Every piece of documentation, every letter of denial, every financial record. Just like I told you." He pauses, then adds quietly, "I want you to know, whether or not I get approved this time, what you did matters. You made them see us. You made them acknowledge that we exist, that we're not just risk calculations or demographic data. You made them see us as people. That means something even beyond the money." Sarah feels tears prick her eyes but doesn't let them fall. "The loan officer will review your application fairly. I can't guarantee the outcome, but I can guarantee it'll be evaluated on its merits. On your merits. That's all I ever wanted." After David leaves for his appointment, Sarah walks outside into the spring air. The neighborhood around her is alive with Saturday activity, children playing basketball in a nearby court, families carrying groceries, an old man sitting on a stoop reading a newspaper. Life happening in all its ordinary extraordinariness, oblivious to the small revolution taking place in the community center behind her. Her phone rings. It's Jason, calling from another remediation center across the city. "Sarah, you need to hear this. We just approved a loan for a woman who was denied 12 years ago. She's standing here crying, and she keeps saying she can't believe it's real. She thought she'd never get the chance. She's 58 years old, and she's getting her chance." Sarah listens to the joy in his voice and realizes something. This work will never be finished. There will always be more bias to uncover, more systems to audit, more power structures that concentrate resources in familiar hands while telling everyone it's just the way things work. But that doesn't make the effort futile. It makes it necessary. It makes it the work of a lifetime, not a moment. She thinks about that woman in the faded blue dress who walked into the Sterling Boardroom 6 months ago, carrying nothing but an envelope and a decade of determination. She thinks about how scared that woman was, how close she came to turning around, how easily the story could have ended differently. And she thinks about all the people who don't walk into boardrooms, who carry their injustices quietly because they don't have the documentation or the persistence or the specific combination of circumstances that allowed Sarah to be heard. Marcus finds her outside, standing on the sidewalk watching the neighborhood move around her. "Penny for your thoughts," he says, and there's something almost shy in his tone, as if he's not quite sure where he stands with her even now. "I was thinking about how much of this depended on luck," Sarah says honestly. "I had the technical skills to understand the algorithm. I had the time and stubbornness to gather evidence for 10 years. I walked into that boardroom on a day when you were willing to listen instead of just having me removed. Any of those variables changes, and we're not standing here today. How many other people are fighting their own battles without those advantages? How many injustices never get addressed because the exact right person in the exact right moment doesn't happen to show up?" Marcus considers this, his expression thoughtful. "I don't have a good answer to that, but I know that the best we can do is make it easier for the next person. Create better reporting mechanisms, better protections, Better systems that don't require heroic individual efforts to function ethically. He pauses. You taught me that. You taught all of us that. I didn't teach you anything you didn't already know, Sarah says. I just made it impossible to ignore. The afternoon sun breaks through the clouds, casting long shadows across the street. Sarah watches them stretch and merge, light and dark existing together the way they always do, the way they always will. She thinks about Gerald Thompson, who is facing federal charges and whose name has become shorthand for corporate corruption. She wonders if he understands yet, if sitting alone with the consequences of his choices has brought any clarity or just bitterness. She wonders if understanding even matters at that point, if acknowledgement of harm has value without the opportunity to repair it. But mostly, she thinks about the people inside that community center. The ones nervously presenting their business plans and tax returns and dreams to loan officers who will, for the first time, evaluate them fairly. She thinks about the ripples spreading outward from this moment, the businesses that might open, the jobs that might be created, the children who might grow up seeing possibility instead of barriers, the generational wealth that might finally have a chance to accumulate in communities that have been systematically excluded from it. Is it enough? No. It will never be enough to truly compensate for what was taken. But is it something? Is it meaningful? Is it worth the sacrifice of anonymity, comfort, and the quiet life Sarah had built in the years after her firing? She thinks about the question she asked herself that morning, before walking into Sterling Tower for the first time. What would compel a woman in a faded cotton dress to walk uninvited into one of the most powerful boardrooms in the city? And she realizes the answer was always simpler than she made it. Not courage, though that was required. Not righteousness, though the cause was just. Simply this: the inability to live with silence when speaking might make a difference. The unwillingness to let injustice be comfortable, invisible, unquestioned. David Torres emerges from the community center an hour later, and Sarah knows before he says anything. She can see it in the way he walks, in the straightness of his shoulders. He approaches her with tears streaming down his face, and he doesn't say anything at all. He just nods, and Sarah nods back. And in that moment of shared understanding, she feels something shift inside her chest. The weight she's carried for 10 years doesn't disappear, but it changes. It transforms from the crushing pressure of unresolved injustice to something else. Purpose, maybe. Or simply the knowledge that speaking up, no matter how long it takes, no matter how impossible it seems, can actually matter. As the sun begins to set over the Bronx, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that make even this scarred neighborhood beautiful, Sarah stands on the sidewalk and watches people leave the community center. Some with approval letters clutched in their hands like winning lottery tickets. Some with rejections they'll have to process and move past. But all of them with something they didn't have when they woke up this morning: acknowledgement. The simple recognition that they were wronged, that the system failed them, and that someone finally is trying to make it right. She pulls out her phone and types a message to the journalist who helped break the story. Just 3 words: "It's working, finally." Then she turns off her phone, because this moment doesn't need to be documented or shared or analyzed. It just needs to be felt. And as she walks down the street toward the subway, past children playing and neighbors talking and life continuing in all its complicated beauty, Sarah Chen understands something fundamental. Justice isn't a destination you arrive at. It's not a problem you solve once and move on from. It's a practice, a commitment, a daily choice to see systems that want to stay invisible, to question conclusions that want to stay unchallenged, to believe that one person with evidence and determination can still change something that seems unchangeable. The question isn't whether one person can make a difference. The question is whether we're willing to try, even when success seems impossible, even when the cost is high, even when silence would be so much easier. Because somewhere in every system, in every structure of power, there are people like that 23-year-old analyst who first noticed something wrong. People who have to decide whether to speak up or stay quiet. And the story of Sarah Chen isn't just about what happened when one person chose to speak. It's about creating a world where more people can make that choice and actually be heard. Where the next whistleblower doesn't have to wait 10 years. Where justice doesn't require quite so much courage because systems are built to serve it from the start. That's the work that remains. That's the work that always remains. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how it should be.